Hi, I'm Susan Kennard, and welcome to the Spiritual Awakener podcast. This is a podcast where I get to interview really amazing people. They've had experiences in their life where they've been turning points or incredible spiritual awakenings that have led them to find their true mission in life. You have too. Sometimes we just don't realize it. Sometimes we just don't realize that illness, that sickness, that death in the family, that experience living in another country, whatever it is, when the rug is pulled from under your feet, that's when you wake up. And our next guest, I can't wait for you to hear his story and hear how he helps you. His name is Shawn Murphy, and he has a story to tell that I'm sure many of you can resonate with. Thank you so much, Shawn, for being here on the Spiritual Awakener. It's lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Happy to be here today.
So, Shawn, we've all had these spiritual awakenings, and many of us have had many. Sometimes we realize what they are, and sometimes we don't. And we look back and we say, wow, that happened and that transformed the whole of my belief system or the whole of my life. But Shawn, you had something really that was quite expansive for you that happened to you. Would you like to tell my audience about it?
Yes, I'd be happy to. As you said, I've gone through many spiritual awakenings during my life, starting at 14. But probably the most significant one was 5 years ago when my 20-year-old daughter had a stroke. She lost her ability to communicate. The stroke was in the left frontal cortex, the speech center. And it had a profound impact on my wife, but a very different profound impact on me. I came home from visiting her in the hospital, and I sat down at my computer and I started to write. I'm not a writer. I have the scores to prove it. Through school, I was really not a writer. But the point is that after 6 months, what I was writing turned into 3 different books. And this was the trilogy of Torn Between Two Worlds.
Yeah.
Basically on 3 different dimensions is how it came out.
Wow.
And that was, my daughter losing her voice gave me my voice, because up until that time in my life, I had not really talked about my beliefs. And here I turned around and went very public with them.
Which is what I call stepping out of the spiritual closet. And it's almost like, we go about our daily life and then something happens that was profound, as this happened for you. And it's like, actually, do you feel like there was like a soul within you, that part of you that just said, I have to speak these words?
Well, it was in 2 steps. The first step was writing the books, and that was, it was completely inspired. I would wake up in the morning and I knew what I was going to write that day. It was just the mechanics of writing it. And some days I woke up and I didn't write anything that day, but after 6 months, there very specific 3 books had come out of this inspiration.
Wow.
So
and
yes,
we can find those on Amazon, can't we, Shawn?
Yes.
We can find those on Amazon. Could you just, I don't normally do it at this stage, but I just want to say the titles of them so that people can find them on.
It's Torn Between Two Worlds. The first book is between science and religion. The second book is between wisdom and rhetoric. And the third book is between the ethereal world and the material world.
Wow. Beautiful subjects, and subjects that I'm sure everybody needs to really read about. Amazing. Okay, my love, carry on.
Well, yes, certainly that's one of the main things that bothers me in the world that we live in today. We live in a very material world, and people don't, and especially religions don't really teach about the afterlife. They don't teach people what to expect. I have a very close friend who spent her life working with lost spirits, with ghosts.
Yeah.
And she said their biggest complaint is nobody told us it would be like this.
And I think a lot of that, I have spoken to people about that before, and I think a lot of that is that religion was really about control. And so if people felt, and I don't want to say this to judge anyone that has a belief, because I think it's really important to live your truth, and whatever your belief is really important to you. But I was brought up a Christian. I was confirmed into the church. That was a belief that our family had. But what I know about that is that religion is just really one way of looking at something, and it really does control, especially Catholic religion, and it controls people. And if we were to know that there was something else, then we wouldn't do as we were told. And this, I think, was definitely taken out of the Bible. I'm not a mine of information on it, but obviously I speak to a lot of people, and I've been told that reincarnation or incarnation was actually taken out of the Bible, Shawn. And it was taken out because people then, would have had an experience that they could be free, and they didn't have to toe the line, and they didn't have to be good. They felt like they had another chance. Whereas if they felt they didn't have another chance and they went to hell, then they might do as they're told, right? So I'm sure it swings and roundabouts. I'm sure on a positive level that's good. But then on another level, obviously what you're saying about your beautiful friend that works with spirit that have passed over, they know that they're going home, and they know that they are finding their true knowing.
Yes, I mean, the first book that I wrote, to be Storm Between Religion and Science, goes completely to that topic, and shows how reincarnation was taken out of the Christian belief. It's very strong in the Buddhist belief, and certainly
Absolutely.
in Hinduism, it's very strong.
Mm.
And there's enough science actually that shows that it happens. There's scientific
Incredible doctors who never believed in it are coming out and saying, I'm a doctor, I'd never believed in it, and I had, this experience where I actually passed over and came back, and so they're talking about it, which I get really excited about, because when we can hear a scientist or a doctor that ordinarily wouldn't believe that, because mind is separate from body, right? Yeah. So soul, definitely, when you see that, honestly, Shawn, it's amazing, because it means that the world is opening up and awakening. And of course, that's a big conversation about what's happened over the last few years.
And my work goes way past that, because, once you realize that we existed spiritually before we came here, and that we're going to exist spiritually after we're here, then there's consequences to that. I mean, people are born with spiritual gifts, but they're also born with spiritual ailments. Ailments which can cause depression, which can cause schizophrenia, which can cause multiple personality syndromes. Once you realize that we're a spirit living temporarily in a physical body, it opens up a big door that a lot of people ignore. And my friend works with people with spirits after they've died. And I'm trying to work with ones who are still here. So changing, right?
Yeah. My mission is to help people, align to their mission of why they're really here. But yours, obviously. So tell me, I'm thinking about your daughter here. So tell me about what opened up for her as well? You know, what opened up for her in her experience? Because without language, it's almost like making her kind of utilize her ability to communicate, but on a different level. So through telepathy, of course, through heart and soul. But what happened for her?
Um, I've promised to let my daughter tell this story, but
Okay.
I'll tell you what I saw. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, my daughter is an empath. She's an indigo child. She's and this experience didn't change her. You know, she didn't have an awakening through this experience because she accepted it and lived through it without regret, without remorse. But what we saw when she was sitting there in the hospital bed and could not speak, we saw the most beautiful person you could see. She had a big smile on her face, and you could just see the energy that was surrounding her, that she was surrounded in love. You know, when it happened, I was away, and we needed to fly to meet her. But I called up the hospital, and I said, "My daughter's alone in the hospital tonight. Can you send a a you know, what do they call them? A dog. You know, they have dogs in the hospital
Oh,
to to be with people."
so
Um,
lovely. Yeah.
and I was disappointed because that didn't happen for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
But when I realized what actually happened is that a spiritual dog came to her and sat on her lap and
As I do.
was there with her during their time. Yes.
Wow. Mm.
And that was the energy that we saw. I mean, the doctors and nurses, they were all like, you walk into this room and you're just happy because this beautiful woman, woman is sitting there in the bed. She can't speak, but she just glows.
Oozes, she kind of
Yes.
emits this beautiful love. Yeah. Hmm. And did she say to you that, obviously, however she communicates with you, how did she express to you that she was fine? I know the smile, but how did she express to you that this was all perfectly in line?
We just thought, you know, it was just her whole being. I have a video of her dancing in her hospital gown, you know, with a heart monitor in one hand, and you know, she can't speak, but you know, she's just being herself, and it was
Mm.
unbelievable. Yeah.
Does she tell her story now?
She's starting to tell her story.
Well, she's very welcome
Um,
to come on here. And even though it wasn't necessarily a spiritual awakening, it was definitely a turning point. um, so she's tell her that she's very welcome to come on my podcast when she's ready.
yes, I will do
Mm,
that. Yes.
mm,
Um, so, I mean, that, you know, this opened a door for me,
mm,
which was quite different.
yeah. And so how did that? So you wrote your 3 books, and then what happened after that, Shawn?
Well, I was out trying to promote my work. I found that the Quora platform was the best place for me to um, express myself,
Mm-hmm,
because you know, Quora it's a questioning platform, so
mm-hmm,
people
mm-hmm.
with real questions go there to find answers.
Amazing.
And so I started answering people's questions in the area of spirituality, in the
Mm.
in religion, in philosophy, um, who have difficult questions.
Mm.
And through that, I started meeting people who were suffering various spiritual ailments.
Yeah.
Um, and it was actually two of them who encouraged me to write my last book, which is a self-help book. It's a spiritual
Mm.
healing book.
Yeah.
Which was a big departure for me. Departure in the sense it kind of out of the head and into the heart.
Yeah.
But it brought to fore the learning that I've had throughout my life. I've studied
Mm.
under two spiritual healers during my life, and I've used the techniques on family members essentially,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
hadn't really gone any further with them.
Yeah.
And then so when I finished writing this book, I said, oh, what am I going to do now? Because now I'm going to have people who have issues, asking
Contacting
me
you.
for help.
Mm-hmm.
I need to have, spiritual healers that I can work with, that can help
Yeah.
these people.
Yeah.
So I started down this road of looking for some spiritual healers, and after a couple of interviews, I said, no, you can do this better than anybody else can do it. And
Amazing. I love that.
that
I
was last
remember
November.
I remember years ago thinking to myself, I wish I could find someone to help me that did it the way that I did it. And I think my partner at the time said to me, you're not going to find anyone that does it how you do it, because that is you. So it's like you just have to like remember that you are your own inner healer, don't you? That you are your channel, that you are one that holds the message for you, your GPS for your soul, really. And we can be a channel for others, but that we do actually have that ability to heal ourselves when we can tap into that knowledge of who we are.
And you know that the vast majority of healers are women.
I do notice that because my
Yeah.
membership, my Soul's Mission membership that I run, is I have a couple of men, but the majority of them are women. Yes.
Understood. But, and I wrote this on my website, is because, I'm an engineer, I'm an entrepreneur. I belong to, a lot of business organizations.
Mm.
I can reach a different set of people.
Exactly. And that's it. It's like, I think we've got our mission, and our mission is exactly what we were meant to do to help that particular collective. And I think it is amazing that you're doing this work with people, because we need more men, divine masculine men, to be out there in the world, being present, speaking, which is one of the reasons why I'm so happy you're here, because you're spreading that message out to people. And it's not just women that do this work. It is the divine masculine as well. And we obviously have both within us, but the divine masculine, the divine feminine, of course. And it is, I mean, some people have told me, and this is no judgment, of course, with anyone, it's said with laughter and humor and love, is that the men are catching up. Like the divine masculine is catching up with the divine feminine, which I think is funny. But I think there are many incredible divine masculines that are out there actually being incredible channels for people. And we just need to hear from you, which is why we're doing this, which is great.
Yes. Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It's very good. Mm-hmm.
So that was an incredible awakening for you, realizing that you were a writer, and that is so great for people to hear, because I channeled my book as well, which is due out very soon, in 3 days, literally, and it just came straight through me. And the thing is that when you are ready, the message comes through. And it is really important for people to remember that, is that it doesn't have to be hard. It's definitely a journey. I definitely think writing a book is an incredible journey, especially if you work with an editor and a publisher, as I do. And it is a journey for you. But that message that you have, Shawn, was within you. And that message that people have, if you're listening to this and you know that there is that message within you, then know that you do not have to be an expert writer. I definitely do not consider myself as an expert writer. I'm a presenter and a speaker, but I'm not an expert writer. Hence why I have an editor. Yeah. But your message comes through because that is the message of source within you to help the collective. Yeah. So this happened with you, Shawn. This was like the first part was the writing. Then this Quora, where you were starting to speak to people, and they were obviously realizing that they were getting lots of support and help. What happened then? Obviously, your third book, and then what happened? You started working with people on a different level.
Yes, yeah, I started working individual people, helping them, in a couple of areas. Some are you know, starting to discover their clairvoyant gifts. And as you know, there's a lot of clairvoyants who they have spiritual baggage that they need to overcome in order to open themselves up. They have
Absolutely. All those times that, they were not able to bring their message to the world, or they were killed for being a healer or speaking the word of God or whatever it is. Absolutely. I see it like a shield around people. So I see it like, the guides that everyone's there and they're like really want to come in and work, but there's this shield. And also grief as well. If there's a huge amount of grief with someone, there it's also that frequency that needs to change, isn't it? So that you can invite that clairaudience or clairvoyance or clairsentience, whatever it might be, whatever your journey is. So yeah, I teach that as well. And I think it is really important for people to know that we all have that ability. We have the ability to have our inner vision and our inner knowing and our inner hearing, but sometimes we just shut that off. I'm being guided here to speak to you about schizophrenia. So could you speak to that a little bit? Because I'm just being guided, so I'm going to go for it.
Oh, certainly. One of the inspirations for my book, I tell his story in the book, because he and I worked together. But he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was put on antipsychotics for many years, and of course they didn't help, because he realized that the voices are real, that they belong to various spirits who were molesting him. And so he got in contact with me, and we started working on various methods to defend himself from these spiritual attacks. And I through the years, I've learned the spiritual laws that exist. I mean, some of them are in the Bible. And when you take the consequences of reincarnation into account, the people we wronged in previous lives are out for revenge.
So,
And
yeah, what comes around goes
they,
around.
yes, and they have the ability to um, attack a person who's living if they're in the spirit world. And if you know a little bit about schizophrenia, I think it's interesting because
Mm,
schizophrenia doesn't occur in young people; it occurs in early 20s,
mm, yeah.
and that's another spiritual law that a child is protected until
Mm,
they've reached adulthood. But after they reach adulthood, that protection goes away, and these other spirits can find you and start taking their eye for an eye justice.
and I've noticed, I've been in this field of work a long time, and what I've noticed is I had this experience where I went to visit someone in a mental health hospital where they were sectioned, and I looked across and saw, and I tell my group that I teach mediumship to actually this and channeling, is that I looked across and I could see. Have you seen the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest? Have you heard of it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So that kind of scene, where they're all walking around and they're just talking to themselves, it seems, and it appears. I saw that for the first time physically, and I could see spirit behind them speaking to them and literally, you know, molesting them in your words. Yeah. So saying these words. And I could see the trauma on the faces of the humans, that were walking around, and the
yeah.
spirits. And the spirits turned round and looked at me because they could see that I could see them.
That you could see them. Yeah,
Okay. Because I've been a medium for 30 years and I was able to see them. And it was the first time I've actually seen that. And as much as it was disturbing in that moment, it led me to realize that schizophrenia was actually, a fine line. There's a fine line between mediumship and madness. And what I've found, and I just call it that because it's an easy way to explain it, but people were labeled as crazy and mad. And actually, when they heal their frequency and those parts of them, there lots of inner child work, etc., all the Akashic work, when that actually shifts, their frequency is of so much light that they no longer attract that frequency. Yeah. So what I found, this is just what I found, is that, and this is just my experience, and being a psychotherapist and a psychologist, we would have trawled down months and months and months of this stuff. Whereas when
yeah,
you can actually spiritually see it, you can actually see and be guided with what needs to heal. And beautiful processes to actually forgive ourselves and forgive those that are around us. And that is such a key I've found to, if we call it dark energies, spirit that are um, psychically attacking us, or whatever people want to call it. I agree with you. Like, there's a lot in the spirit realm. A lot of people say in the spiritual world, they say everything is light and love, right? And I definitely was naive to that when I was younger. I thought everything was light and love. I had a few awakenings from that. But it is a contrast, isn't it? And it is a beautiful contrast for us. We've come, I believe, as volunteers right now to shift something big in the world, in consciousness, in understanding who we are. And of course, we've had a great awakening over the last couple of years, and a big awakening coming within. You're going within and coming within, right? But I do feel that what you're speaking about is really important to speak about, because there are going to be a lot of people that know somebody who's on very high medication
yeah,
and really, really troubled, and they've been labeled as mad, or, really very unwell, and there's nothing they can do for them. When I really truly believe, like you do, there is something that people can do to heal. So tell me about, Shawn, tell me about how you work with people in that way, just to help our audience.
Okay. Well, I mean, what you said is very important. The most powerful positive energy is forgiveness,
Yeah.
and that's actually the only tool you have against somebody who's seeking revenge on you.
Yeah, of course.
And it's and so the way that I work in the first chapter of my book, I talk about all of the various classes of spiritual entities that can molest you. I just say molest, but and what the rules are for them, because there are rules.
Wow.
The vengeful spirit, the one that we're talking about in schizophrenia, is the most difficult one, because they have the right for revenge.
Yeah, because you're saying because, and most people know this, but if you don't know this, we have lived many times before and experienced many lives and many experiences. And if you haven't heard that before, feel if that feels right to you. And obviously, if it doesn't feel right to you, then just let that bit go. But we're just going to carry on here because both of us, Shawn and I, both have done a lot of research and a lot of work on this, and we experience it. So we know firsthand that we have had many experiences before and many lives. And so we have been everything. And I think coming now, this age of incredible expansion and awakening, we're not young souls. We are souls that have been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, made the film, and we're ready to let go of all of that, those parts of us where perhaps we would have wronged someone else, betrayed someone else, killed someone else, burnt someone at the stake, whatever it might be. And all of those things that happen to us. So forgiveness of our mother, forgiveness of our father, forgiveness of our past lives in this life, our past loves, our past relationships, but also forgiveness to all those that we would have harmed in the past. So it's my guides are saying it's truly the forgiveness of self. It's the forgiveness of that part of us that would have wronged anyone, because the majority of us couldn't even imagine wronging someone in that way. Yeah.
Yes. That's true. The other that's probably more common is what I call a familiar spirit, and these are the spirits that we cling to, mothers, brothers, sisters, and we want them to be here, right?
Yeah.
They died young, and we draw them to us, and they're not, in one sense, they're not a negative spirit, really.
No.
But they can meddle in your life.
And do they hinder as well? Does it hinder? Because I always feel like, we do invite people to come on our journey, and quite often I can see that in someone's field where they have maybe had trauma as a child, and they've invited spirit to join them and support them and look after them. That's just what I've seen. And so when we can let that go, it's usually when someone's really ready to step fully onto why they're here. I've noticed that, it's like with empowerment, they're ready to let that go. But if a lot of people have lost their mother or father very young, would you say, so if you're listening to this and this resonates with you, would you say that it doesn't only hinder you, but it hinders them?
Well, yeah, it hinders both, definitely. The work that I reference is Dr. Edith Fiore. I don't know if you've read her work.
No.
Um, but she spent her life as a psychologist dealing with uh, this different types of possession. She
Wow.
writes a story about a pair of twins, and one of the twins died in a car accident. And the sister, she just said, "I'll do anything to help you. I'll do anything. Just God, let me do anything to help her." And
Mm,
what she did was she invited her spirit to stay with her. Okay.
mm, mm,
And the symptoms that this woman had years later this is a benign spirit. This is her sister. Um, the symptoms were uncertainty,
mm,
um,
mm.
maybe forgetfulness. She walked to the refrigerator and didn't know why she was there, because the sister wanted something in the refrigerator, and she didn't know what it was. And she couldn't. The sister wanted
Don't
the
we all
blue
have
dress,
that? Or
and
we go,
she wanted the
don't
red
we all
dress.
sometimes go to the refrigerator and we forget why we're there?
But I'm just saying it's
Yeah,
they're very small symptoms.
yeah,
But after a long period of time of living with your sister, you'll go crazy,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Eventually, because she's second guessing you and saying, no, that's not good for you. Try this. So you've got this whispering in your ear all the time.
Mm. So
Um,
how did she manage to let that go?
but it's just uninvite her. It's
Mm,
it's kind of like the vampire story, right?
mm,
If you invite them in, they're here, but you
mm-hmm.
can uninvite them.
Yeah,
Just ask them to go with God.
go with
Go
love.
live your life. I
Mm.
don't want you here anymore, and you can disinvite them.
What do you think happens? Obviously, we've had this situation in the world, where a lot of people have passed over. A lot of people have passed over this last couple of years, whether it was through what they put in their body or whether it was through a dis-ease that happened that took them over. We don't know, but their soul would have made that choice. What happens when something, in your opinion, is so sudden and unexpected, and perhaps you're very young? What happens to the soul, in your opinion?
Um, it really depends on where the soul is in their development,
Mm,
right?
mm,
It doesn't matter what happened. It really matters who they are. So
yeah.
somebody who has a very strong belief in the afterlife, regardless of what happens to them, they're not
Mm,
going to they're not going to hang around. Um,
yeah.
they know there's something better out there, and they're going to go for it. But somebody who's very heavy, materialistic, maybe
Mm,
a drug addict or an alcoholic or a smoker, somebody with an addiction,
mm,
regardless of how they die, they're going to hang around and try and um, still their addiction.
what?
There's
Say
a
that
very
again.
well to satisfy their addiction.
Mm,
There's a very good segment in the movie Ghost.
mm-hmm.
If
I've
you
seen
remember
it.
the movie where the guy is trying to get suck on the cigarette that another guy's smoking. He says,
Oh
"Oh, just
gosh,
a
I forgot
drag,
about
just a
that. Yeah,
right."
yeah.
It's that
Mm,
they have that addiction spiritually. It's in them,
mm,
and they try to satisfy their addiction through people who smoke or drink or
mm.
take drugs. Um, there's sex addicts, and
Yeah.
they encourage
So they would be
behavior.
more. They would, yeah. So they would be more. So say there's someone who is a drug addict or an alcoholic or food addict or whatever it might be. They would then attract, and this is where the laws of the universe comes in, isn't it?
Yeah.
They would then attract that spirit to them. And
Yes,
this is why, I mean, I worked with veterans for a long time. This is no judgment with any veterans, by the way. I could see, I could see with them. So I could see it in their eyes. I could see when they had dark spirits with them. And it was because of their trauma that they were holding. You know, they were holding such trauma. Actually, most of it was from childhood, to be honest, and it was just triggered on the battlefield. But it was held there within them, and these spirits were these dark entities, I called them, were actually feeding and
exactly.
attracted to that fear trauma. So you would say, I mean, that's like attracts like, right? But so you
Yes.
would say that so where I'm going with this is that our true work, our true inner work, is keeping our frequency really high. So we are forgiving ourselves, we are loving ourselves, we are doing that healing work, we are remembering who we are, and we're living our joy.
Well,
Yeah.
you say keeping it high, but somebody who is an addict, they need to raise
Mm.
their level, right?
Yes.
And so
Yeah. Yeah.
through nature, through gardens, through water, ocean, just
Mm.
anything they can do to start raising their energy level
Yeah.
will it it's a disinfectant for those
Yeah.
negative spirits, right?
Yeah. And that's such a good. So, you know, if you're listening to this and you've been feeling this way, or you've been feeling that you have an addiction, or you know of someone with an addiction, it sounds really simple, but the key things are being in touch with nature, being in touch with the sea, being in touch with the grass, being in touch with the trees, birds, animals. You know, animals just absorb our emotion as well. Bless them for that, you know, being here
Yeah.
in this world with us. But and sometimes they become sick because of that. But they really help. They really help you to heal your heart, and they really
Yeah.
do help. So if you are in this position where you feel, you know, you haven't got any hope, or you feel there's no one around you, no one to support you, no one to help you, you can definitely reach out to Shawn, and we'll tell you how to in a moment, um, and why you would do that as well. But if you feel in this now moment that there isn't anyone to help you, then just definitely get out and find some nature, because you are nature, and you are part of Mother Earth, you are part of Gaia, you are part of the sky, you are part of the moon, you are part of everything, and there is no separation. So find an aspect of that and start to really feel that energy within you. Mm. So, Shawn, if somebody, you know, felt really drawn to work with you or to talk to you, what would they do? How would they contact you, and what could you help them with?
Well, they can contact me through Quora or through my website, which is just tornbetweentwoworlds.com, and just contact me there. And
Yeah.
then, I just have a discussion with them and try and understand what are the types of um, entities that might be in their life. What,
Mm,
have they do they have a past life trauma that they should get over?
mm,
And
mm-hmm.
then I pretty much laid out all the options in my book. And you don't necessarily have to be um, have a spiritual ailment to take all the suggestions, because everything you just said
Mm,
will help anybody. You know, just
mm-hmm.
connect with nature. It doesn't matter where you are spiritually; it will
Yeah.
help you.
Yeah.
So all of the things that I recommend are natural, non-addictive treatments. They're using the natural energies that exist around us in
Yeah.
plants and minerals and in
Mm-hmm.
nature. And then, very specific types of prayers. It's how to
Mm,
disinvite somebody. I mean, there's a ritual that you have. that you can go through to do that.
And is that in your
Very,
book,
very
my
simple.
love? Is that in your book, The Ritual?
Yeah, those are all in my book. Yeah.
Yeah. Which book is that in? To the people.
That's in the last one, Torn Between Two Worlds, between
Yeah.
modern medicine and spiritual healing.
Wow. And obviously I'd love to talk a little bit. Now, I appreciate, like I know I said to you it's about half an hour, this interview, but I did say sometimes it goes over and it depends on what I really feel guided to talk about with you. But, one of the things that I think people are understanding about themselves and perhaps awakening to themselves is that we don't always need to look outside of us for an answer. Yeah, that the answers are within, that we have channels like myself and like you, like many other people that help people. But perhaps when we used to reach for the pill, the drug, the medic, the answer in a jab, whatever it might be, perhaps when we used to do that, that was before we really understood that we are this incredible being of light having a human experience. Could you talk to that?
Well, certainly, it's one of the things that I highly recommend anybody to do, and that is to go on any type of journey of self-discovery, because especially if you're suffering from depression. I mean, depression is your spirit yelling at you saying, I want to do something different. Right.
I agree with you.
Okay. And so the knowledge is in you. What the reason that you came into this life is inside of you, and aligning your daily activities with what your spirit wants to do, that brings you joy. And joy is different than happiness. Joy is always with you, even if you're
Peace.
down.
I feel like it's like a peace. It's like yeah, thank you. It's like a knowing. It's like a trust. It's like to me, you don't necessarily have to be going yay every minute of the day, but it's like I can't really find the word for it, but it's like a knowing. It's a knowing of who you are, and a knowing that all is well, and a knowing that all your needs are met. Yeah.
Yeah, because once you can realize that, and I'd say joy instead of happiness, because if you're in a state of joy and you feel pain, and it was funny, right before I sent my book to my publisher, I was on a walk. And I just said, why does my entire left side hurt? my knee, my hip, my elbow, the whole left side of me just hurt.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I said, oh God, I forgot. It was so important topic in this book is pain.
Yeah.
And how to listen to pain.
Yeah, I love that.
People want to cover that up, get rid of the pain.
And suppress that. Yeah, and suppress that. Yeah.
Instead of listening to it and understanding what your body is trying to tell you. Absolutely. Because your body is very smart.
I call it the barometer for your soul. So I call it like the body is the barometer for your soul. Like your soul is going, hey, and your body's going, I'm just trying to tell you. and you can either listen to it or not listen to it. And I think it gets louder and louder. And I've really felt that, the cancer message is the coming home message. It's like coming home to yourself. You don't have to go home to spirit. You can come home to yourself. And that, to me, I think is a really key thing, is that each time your body shows something, I just call it a message, to be honest. Each time the message comes up, like your left side you know, the left side of your body. I would call that the divine feminine part of you, actually. So the left side to me is the divine feminine, the right side is the divine masculine. Other people might say something different. But, you know, that part of you was like, ooh, I'm just like actually, you know, sharing my whole heart with the world here, you know, and it's like that beautiful receiving part of you as well, the divine feminine. So it's so listening to that, I think it's a great link that you've talked about, is listening to that part of you and not to judge it and not to say, my body has done this or my body is letting me down. I think it's one of the key things. And on the television, not that I watch television, but on the television, there are adverts of let's battle this, let's kill this. And to me, that is about missing the message of what your soul is trying to convey through your body. And I get a bit passionate about that because that's one of the things I help people with. And it is so important for me that people realize that the body is not separate from the soul and the mind.
Well, I like the way that Hoffman defined us, because people today will talk about mind, body, and soul, and Hoffman has a more refined definition of who we are, which I really like, and that is that you know, and he did this long before people talked about the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
But he says we're made up of an intellect, we have an emotional self, we have an inner child, right? And we have our shadows.
Yeah.
Right. And then we have our body, which is, telling us its own message. And then we have our divine self. So it's a much more clear picture of what's going on in a person.
There's all those little facets of us.
Yes, there's this. We all carry a darkness in us.
Yeah.
And if we ignore that darkness and don't recognize that it's there, you can become fanatical.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So there's all these pieces that work together.
Give an example of that.
Denying.
Shawn, give an example of that for my audience. So if you ignore your parts of you, the parts of you that you don't always want to look at, your darkness, yeah. What do you mean that you become fanatical?
Well, many men have the problem of becoming completely intellectual. And if they don't recognize that they have this negative aspects to them, they can become righteous and just be overbearing, and they think they're right, but yet they have this darkness within them. And
but women can as well. Women can as well. So women can be in their masculine more.
It's easier for a man to do it, but a woman can do it
too.
too.
Okay. I'll give you. All right, then I'll let you have that one. Yeah.
It's harder for a woman to ignore her emotional self.
Yes.
Okay. It's easier for a man to ignore it.
And do you think that is partly because the man perhaps has been brought up to be the one that has to fight the tiger, fight the lion, get the food to the cave, drag the wildebeest or whatever they do, and actually have to do no emotion with that, literally just get it, kill it, provide. That
is the it's the cultural anthropology answer. What you're saying is that if women were traditionally protecting their children, so traditionally they had to be thinking about a bunch of things, right?
We're good
What
at
are the
that. We're really
dangers?
good at that.
What,
We're really
yeah,
good at
what are the dangers?
that. Yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah,
men were out chasing the animal. They had to be
yeah.
quiet,
Hmm.
right? Um, Communication was not important. Um,
I'm laughing at
and
this because you got to
no,
listen.
because
We play
if you
this
study,
bit. Men have to be quiet.
yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah,
but they don't have to communicate is the
yeah,
question, and
yeah.
they're focusing on a single point, and
Mm,
um, that comes through in many people, um,
yeah.
both men and women,
Mm,
and that's
yeah,
it's cultural anthropology.
yeah. And it's also funny because it's so true, and it plays itself out. Many people would say that about some men, perhaps the older men, in the sense of the older frequency of men, that they wouldn't speak and they wouldn't say how they felt, and it makes sense because what their role is or was to just be really focused on the target and focused on this is what I have to get to survive. Yeah.
There was a very interesting study
Amazing.
done at the Zurich ATA where when they
Mm,
first started with um, what the MRI, the colored MRI.
mm.
I forget what it's called. Um, but anyway, they were testing men and women, and
Do you mean
so
Curline? Do you mean Curline photography, or
yeah,
What do
not
you mean?
no.
No. What do you mean?
It's Gehirntomographie. I know the German word for it. I don't know the English word for it.
Mm,
Um, but anyway, what they did is they had men and women, and they just gave them some mathematical equations to solve.
mm,
So, you know, 1 + 1 = 2, and a man can do that like this, right?
mhm.
And they only one part of their brain is being used to
Yeah.
do it.
Hmm.
But when the women did it, it took them longer, and 5 parts of the brain lit up. And they're just the researchers are going, why do they have to care about how number one feels? Because the emotional part of the brain was being used to figure out what 1 + 1. I mean, does one like one? Or maybe they don't like each other, and but that's what was going on in the brain, is that
Yeah.
all the aspects were being looked at,
Yeah.
where in the man it was just 1 + 1. Okay, it's 2.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Fascinating.
But the woman's brain was more active
Mm,
for a simple task.
yeah.
Um,
Well, fascinating. What a conversation. I just want to, just before we close, because I'm going to bring it to a close now. Um, what a great experience to talk to you about all these different aspects, the spiritual awakening, which appeared to be the rug that was pulled from under your feet, your beautiful daughter that chose to have you as her father and you chose her to experience this world together, and how that was an incredible blessing for humanity because of the work you do now. And people can get hold of you on your website, which you said, and it will be all in the show notes, of course.
yeah.
But when they contact you, you said to me before we came on the recording, before we recorded this podcast together, you said that you offer it free, okay, but with a donation. If somebody wants to donate and they feel they want to donate, they can donate. Is
Mhm.
that's I've heard that right? Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. If somebody feels like they were helped by it and they can afford it,
Yeah.
it's great. Then, donate
Amazing.
to the cause.
Amazing.
Um,
So if you're listening to this and you felt that you've been really stuck and you felt you haven't had resources and you felt in a really stuck situation, then definitely reach out to Shawn because he can help you move through that and give you the tools to move through it yourself with his help. So definitely reach out to him. Shawn, just give us your website again so they can contact you.
My website is tornbetweentwoworlds.com.
Torn
And
between two worlds.
you can contact me there. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Quora. Just Google me and you'll find me.
It's amazing, isn't it? We've got this all these ways of being contacted now, and part of the amazing awakening over the last 2 years, 2.5 years, has brought that to the fore, which is amazing. So, Shawn, thank you so much for being here on the Spiritual Awakener podcast. I've had an amazing time talking to you. It's been enlightening, and I feel the conversation has opened many doors for people. So thank you so much. And if you've got a spiritual awakening story that you want to share with me and my listeners, I'd love to hear from you. So please find me at susankennard.co.uk. Much love for now. Until the next episode.